Welcome to the NPTE Final Frontier podcast, helping one student at a time. Visit NPTEFF.com to enroll today so you can pass tomorrow. Thank you for joining us here on the NPTE Final Frontier podcast. My name is David.
And my name is Emily. Today, we will be discussing that it's okay to take a break. So first, we want everyone listening to understand just how important it is to take breaks, especially while you're preparing for your upcoming exam. One of the most important reasons to take breaks is to avoid burnout. So for those of you wondering, what really is burnout? At the current time, burnout isn't technically a medical diagnosis. Burnout is exhaustion in a physical or an emotional manner. This also involves a sense of reduced achievements and identity. So, with that definition at hand, David, start off the episode with telling us, have you ever experienced burnout? And if so, what were some symptoms you personally experienced?
So I have definitely experienced burnout because I am human. I am normal. I am not a machine. So for any listener out there that is experiencing burnout or feels that sensation oncoming, it is normal and it is very common. So for myself, some signs that I usually recognize is just that sensation of feeling overwhelmed, especially as a student. When you start to feel overwhelmed, you start to feel that you are behind. You start to feel that there's so much to get done and you just don't have enough time in the day. You start to feel that burnout when you're going out with your friends and you start not to be able to focus on conversations because you have this content in the back of your mind grilling and drilling over and over. So of course it all just compiles one on top of the other, one emotion, one sensation on top of the other. And it's so important to just know that it's absolutely normal. How about
Like,
yourself?
I completely agree. And although it's normal and it does occur, I think it's something to try to address early on because although many people experience it, it's something that can be prevented to a degree. But before we get into that, some of the symptoms I personally experience, I I get a few different symptoms. I definitely get exhausted and tired, more emotionally than physically, I would say. And with that, I get extremely frustrated. I become irritable, especially to those that I'm always around, which isn't fair for them. But I can tell when I'm starting to reach burnout based on kind of how I'm handling the little things. Those become the big things and I start to kind of dwell on them. So those are definitely some of the ways I get burnout.
So then when you were a student, what usually led to that burnout? And how could have you prevented that burnout?
So I think for me with burnout early on in my studies, especially before I even started preparing for the boards, just when I was in school, I would try to study all day, every day. Every minute I had that I wasn't working part time, I was spending studying. One way I feel like I could have prevented burnout was to focus more on my quality of studies instead of the quantity. I think as a student, you can get so caught up in feeling like you need to be studying every minute of the day, but that's not efficient studying. You don't need to be studying at all times every day because you just can't retain that much information. So I think when I started to kind of hone back on how much time I was spending studying and instead focused on the quality of my studies, putting in a few solid hours per day really helped me with my burnout, but also just in terms of retaining information as well. What about you?
So I felt very similar as you did. Something that led to my burnout was just feeling that there was just so much to be done. Like after you get a practice exam, get done with it. You have to go through those 200 to 250 questions, and you can't let that carry over, spill over for too long because then you never get back to it, or it just compiles up next to the next practice exam. So having everything all at once really started to feel overwhelming, having a lot to just feel like you always had to read something was overwhelming, and also not taking enough time for me. I think that this is something very common is a lot of students will start to prioritize this exam, which is important to prioritize, but they don't prioritize their own well-being. And for myself, I did not prioritize my own well-being at times where I would have that mentality of I knew I should be going to the gym. I knew that I should be going outside to go for a run or hanging out with friends. So what I would tell myself, if I had time to go to the gym, then I had time to be studying. And if I did not do well, then I could blame it on my decision to go to the gym instead of focusing on studying. But I feel like that mindset is um so hurtful at times, and it really does harm you and hold you back because getting to that gym, going out with your friends for that little break, it's so important because that itself, it rejuvenates you. It reignites that fire inside of you. So this way you have that energy to get back into those studies.
And with
So
that being
yeah,
said, I think one of the biggest things you said was you knew it's what you should have been doing, but you just couldn't make time for it because you were so overwhelmed with all of the other things you should be doing in terms of studying. That alone is such a stressful way to approach things because it makes you feel torn. It makes you feel like no matter what you do, you can't win. No matter what you're focusing on, you should be focusing on something else, which I think is so common for students and anyone to experience. And I think what's important, like you said, is it's okay to make time for both things. That way you're not kind of putting all your eggs in one basket and you're making time for everything, which can help with that stress in general.
yeah. And something that's going to help with that, with putting that forward, is having a structured schedule. Have that daily timetable and having a daily schedule of knowing from this time to this time, I'm going to study this. But from this time to this time, it's me time. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go meditate or whatever that may be. Having that scheduled breaks so important.
I cannot agree more. That was one of the things I found most helpful for me too, because like you said, there are so many things you can be studying, so many things you can be looking over. So if you don't have a schedule in place, you're going to be overwhelmed and feel like, well, what else should I be doing? What else can be doing? If you already have that schedule set up, though, you will say, no, I don't need to do anything else right now. I already have time set aside for the rest of the day or the next few days where I will review those other topics. I already have that time scheduled. Right now is time for me to focus on other things outside of my studies to better myself, which will in return help with my studies and help with my retention as well. So I totally agree with that. Now, we have discussed some ways to kind of prevent burnout when we felt it coming on, but let's say no matter what you did, the burnout is there. It is real. What are some ways you would recommend or ways that you may have personally used to help recover from that burnout, to get yourself back on track?
So I think that is so important to actually recognize that burnout or that emotion that is oncoming to you. I think that recognition is very important because denying that is there, that feeling inside of you doesn't exist, that is just going to neglect it. And that's not addressing it. So I think that acknowledging what you're going through is important. And then for myself, something that was very valuable for me was talking to people, being open about it, talk to my friends about it, talk to my fellow classmates about it. And I would be open about how I was feeling. And it was very common because then you start to hear how other people may have went through this same thing and how they were able to recover.
And I think one of the biggest thing you said is being able to acknowledge the burnout. Yes, I think many people need to just simply get better at acknowledging the burnout. But then there are others who, which is me, I'm calling myself out when I say this, is I could acknowledge that I was burned out, but I wasn't addressing it, which I think is the next layer. So acknowledging it first, but then how are you addressing it? What are you actually doing to change the burnout and get yourself back on track? And one thing I needed to personally do was I always had my scheduled breaks in place because I had my study plan. But there were times where I needed to make more unscheduled breaks. There were some days where, okay, I said I would be studying from 9 to 12, but maybe it was only 10:30 and I realized I needed an extra break. I wasn't retaining it. I needed to step away. And it's okay to do that. Just because you have your schedule, it's a loose schedule. If you need to modify and adjust it, you need to be comfortable with doing that. And that's just having confidence in yourself and trusting the entire process, which can be challenging.
Oh yeah, it's okay not to be okay. And I think that's very important. And we can't stress that enough, that it's okay not to be okay. And that we definitely highly suggest that if you do feel any of these sensations or emotions oncoming, definitely reach out to someone and speak to them and be open about it. And know that you are not alone out there.
Exactly. I can guarantee you are not alone or someone else has experienced a similar thing. And one thing I can tell you is the entire Final Frontier team is here for each and every one of you, whether it's just you need a quick little motivational pump up from David, or you need a little bit more organizational review to help get you on track from me. No matter what it is, we are always here for you all. So never feel alone in this process.
For sure, you are never alone in Final Frontier. Now that we have reviewed taking a break and how important that is, here's a quote from Maya Angelou. Each person deserves a day away in which no problems are confronted, no solutions searched for. Each of us needs to withdraw from the cares, which will not withdraw from us. So, warriors, it's okay to step off that cord at times. It's okay to take that day to yourself, take that time for yourself, get off the court, go for a walk. It is okay not to be okay. You are powerful, you are strong, you are a Final Frontier warrior. You will pass.
Thank you very much for listening. For more information on the NPTE Final Frontier, please visit npteff.com. You can also check out all of our social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
Till next time, have a great day and a powerful tomorrow.